Hey everyone, CDD Music Reviews here. I am CDD and this will be a music review of the new Jesu and Sun Kill Moon self-titled collaborative project. Jesu is a post-metal project fronted by Justin Broderick, and Sun Kill Moon is a singer-songwriter project fronted by Mark Kozelek. I'm not really that familiar with Jesu, other than they pretty much make post-metal. The frontman used to be of Godflesh, and he recently resurrected that project back. But Sun Kill Moon I've been pretty much familiar with since they dropped Benji. Benji being this really beautiful, really personal, really heartfelt singer-songwriter album that ended up being pretty much my singer-songwriter album of that year. I love unlikely collaborations, even though on a personal level this one's not that unlikely. I think on a stylistic level this one's relatively unlikely. Some of my favorite albums of recent years came from unlikely collaborations, namely Lou Reed and Metallica Lulu, which some of you are probably seething at the mouth hearing. This album, in theory, I thought, okay, this would be at least interesting. I'd definitely like to hear what they're doing, but after listening to this so many times, so far this is the worst album I've heard all year. And it's January, so obviously there's probably going to be worse down the road, but right now this is the worst album I've had to review, put myself listening through this year. Take the opening track, for example, Good Morning My Love. There's these post-metal riffs kicking off the track, which I thought were pretty cool, pretty atmospheric and somewhat emotional, if just decent. But then you get Mark Kozelek trying to sing and shout over these riffs, like it's something off of Benji or even Universal themes, and it just doesn't sound that pleasant. The thing is, I can't hear Mark. I can't. These tracks with post-metal riffs, I'm trying to understand what he's saying. And the little blips I did catch were meanderings I didn't like off of the Sun Kill Moon's previous album, Universal Themes, which I thought was just pretty good. So, in order to try to cut out the middleman, I decided to take out my headphones, plug them into my computer speakers since for some reason I can't stream the album on my iPad, just turn on my noise cancellation and try my best to understand what he's saying, at least. And that only alleviated the problem slightly, especially on the second track, where he just sounds like he's Courage the Cowardly Dog fronting Earth, and the only bits of it I catch are on the tail end of each line. John Cusack! And that's the same for every single track that has post-metal riffage on it. That's the first three tracks, and these three tracks are long. The first one being 7 minutes, the second being 8, and the third being 6. That's over 20 minutes of the close to 80 that's on here, and you spend it doing this. We get to the next track. Last night I performed like Elvis and left them laughing like Richard Pryor. 8 minutes of just this really boring instrumental. Sounds like Postal Service inspired, which wouldn't be far off comparison seeing as Mark is friends with Ben Gibbard. But anyway, this track is just him talking about fan mail he's received, his status, the fact that Pitchfork gave Universal Themes a 6, and the last 2 minutes are just him reading this fan letter from Singapore, which is pretty neat of him to do. How many fans get the opportunity to have their own fan letter read to them by the artist himself? Still, it just doesn't really add anything to the project whatsoever. But then we get to the only track that I love, maybe not love, but enjoy a lot from beginning to end, Fragile. The song is essentially about how Mark feels about the death of Yes bassist Chris Squire, and the fact that he too had a friend of his from his childhood named Christopher die of leukemia as well, and he pretty much spends 5 minutes sounding really heartfelt and legitimate about these two deaths being caused by the exact same thing. And given that it's being done over this acoustic guitar chords, this sounds a lot like something that would have come off of Benji if Chris Squire died in 2014. Then we get to the sixth track, Father's Day, which has little to do with Father's Day or an event that happened on Father's Day, but more so just, once again, Mark meandering around about going on tour and all this other stuff. The instrumental, once again, is Postal Service inspired, except Sounds like a beat that could have came off of U2's Achtung Baby, specifically So Cruel. We get the track Sally, which is another post-metal track where I can't understand Mark. The riff is pretty much recycled from if Mogwai did Mo riffs or something. It's a throwaway track. And then they get the 8th track, America's Most Wanted, Mark Kozelek and John Dillinger. It's a post-rock song, pretty much. I got this build to it that was pretty somewhat interesting to start with until I realized that, again, Mark's meandering around lyrically. I don't know what it is about Mark that makes him pretty much the only singer-songwriter who I can honestly say says way too much. And then we get the song Exodus. Once again, another beautiful sentiment. It's a song about parents that live to see their children die instead of them dying before their children do. How that's like one of the worst things imaginable. He actually mentions Nick Cave's son's death. This instrumental actually reminds me of like Carrie and Lowell by Sufjan Stevens. So this like driving piano serving as the metronome surrounded by this really serene and very dreary atmosphere. And I would like it if, number one, Mark sounded more compelling, and number two, if he didn't just blatantly reference his second cousin Carissa, which was the opening track of a Benji. The person exploring this album did not listen to the song Carissa off of Benji. I admit it's kind of a far-fetched assumption, but still, it's just weird that this story being brought up again instead of just him cutting straight to the point. And the fact that this song is almost 10 minutes long just does not go that well. Neither does the last track, Beautiful You, which is 14 minutes long. This is probably the ambient piece that Justin gave Mark, and it just... You didn't give me at least 6 minutes of music I enjoy, and now you're going to just give me a 14-minute long ambient piece with you singing about Caroline. Why, man? Why? So yeah, I did not enjoy this album, not even a little. The one track that I liked, Fragile, was just really good and not like something I absolutely loved. It and maybe a few other moments, lips from certain tracks might be like the only saving grace for it, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. And shit, I think I figured out my issue with this album and Universal Themes when Mark was reading the fan letter that was on the 4th track. The letter itself pretty much says that he loved Universal Themes because it was Mark getting more personal. And he felt like the album was just for the fans, the people that have been following him for 20 years, and not the hipsters that jumped on because of Benji, which hurts me as a fan, because Benji was how I got into Sun Kill Moon, how I got even interested in Sun Kill Moon. And hearing that, it kind of alienates me. And I guess that's my issue with Universal Themes and this album, the fact that maybe I'm not this personally invested in Mark Kozelek's life. What interested me about Benji was how he made the lyricism, the mundaneness, and the meanderings interesting and really thought-provoking. Here, in Universal Themes for the most part, it doesn't do that. So, I just don't see any point in sitting through this album trying to understand what it is Mark's saying if the little bits I get sound like not even a narrative, not even like these interesting lines at all. And the bits that I can hear, it just reminds me of the reasons I didn't like Universal Themes as much as I wanted to. That's my thoughts on it. I didn't like it. If you're a fan of both bands, Jesu and Sun Kill Moon, then maybe you'll get something out of it, but me personally, I just did not, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. This album is a negative 1.9 out of plus 3, so greater than -2, less than -1. Just did not like this album at all. But if you listen to this album, and you should, I mean, it's got maybe a few moments. What'd you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What should I listen to and possibly review next? This is CW Reviews here, signing off.